I suspect there's never been a time in any of our lives when hearing that gospel, those words, didn't touch some deep and vulnerable place in our hearts. Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Of course, it might have been a whole lot better if Jesus had said, just give me all of your burdens and I'll take them all away. But that's not what he offers. Instead, it's rest. The type of rest that the Gospels repeatedly describe Jesus as taking himself, not relinquishing or abandoning, but laying aside for a time. Rest measured in terms of apartness and silence and distance. And the purpose, the necessity of this rest for him and for us is in the first place, I think, just to breathe, not to get trapped into reacting all the time, into defensiveness, having our behavior always determined by someone else, or by our own history, or by circumstances that we haven't chosen and can't control, particularly at a time when our own resources are diminished. That we're not lured into dancing to someone else's tune, singing someone else's song. This is, of course, what the reference to children in the marketplace is about, not having our behavior dictated by others, neither being fickle and easily swayed, running after the crowd, mirroring what everyone else is doing, nor, on the other hand, getting stuck in some rigid, inflexible way of thinking, incapable of imagining any other possibilities. The way of Jesus invites us into this quiet, tolerant spaciousness in which what is clamoring for attention is quietened for a while. What claims urgency is given pause. And what is enduring, what is of value, is given the time and the space to emerge. And this is not inactivity, something to which we resign ourselves because there's nothing better to do. It's something that we choose, that we protect and safeguard. It is holy time when we make connections, we discern patterns, we make sense, hopefully, of what is happening in and around us. It's why Isaiah has God declaring, in returning and rest you will be saved, in quietness and trust shall be your strength. When else are we going to grasp what God is leading us into and opening up before us? And so our tradition, like so many others, counsels this need for stillness, quiet, solitude, because it is the precursor for wisdom. There is, of course, a whole slab of the Bible called wisdom literature. It takes up about a third of the Old Testament. And you know some of it by heart. You can even sing it. To everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to weep, a time to laugh. And wisdom resides in knowing what time it is. What is the behavior? What is the response that is appropriate for this moment? That's the passage from Ecclesiastes that Jesus is echoing in today's gospel when he speaks of a time to mourn and a time to dance. You have to recognize the moment in which you are living in order to stand a chance of responding to its demands maturely, justly, honestly, and to the best of your ability. In one form or another, you and I are always having to discern what time it is. What is the season? What is this community, this culture, this person, this problem, this crisis inviting from me? How do I respond with patience, discipline, insight, particularly when there are so many other voices around clamoring for attention? On one hand, we always have with us the congenitally angry, the reliably negative, the not-to-be-crossed zealot, the one who manages to have a better idea about just about everything, who exhausts everyone and everything. But we also have genuinely pressing tasks, the works of justice and mercy, that demand that we do something. But what do we do? Do I speak? Do I remain silent? Do I confront? Or do I ignore? Do I insist? Do I let it go? And then there are the things in our lives that have to end. And the longer we cling to the empty shell, the more we prolong the suffering for everyone. Is this a time to tear down or a time to build up, to gather or to cast away, to rip apart or to sew together? You know, there's that old saying, it's hard to read the writing on the wall when your back's against it. Is this the time for stepping away from the wall, turning around and reading what everyone else has known for ages? And that applies to virtually every relationship, every decision that you and I have to make. How do we live and consume and share wisely? How do we act authentically, faithfully, morally, compassionately, particularly when those things don't look exactly alike? And there's no rule book that can give us the correct answer every time. It probably hasn't escaped your attention that over the last few years, wisdom seems to have become particularly elusive, particularly in our national conversation. Don't all the messes that we find ourselves in have something to do with not knowing what time and season this is, failing to recognize what the intelligent and compassionate response to this moment might be? We don't make good decisions as individuals or as a nation when we are locked in conflict, when we spend years defining ourselves solely in terms of who and what we are not. We don't make good decisions. We don't maintain healthy relationships when our heads are filled with chatter, with other people's opinions, nor when we listen only to our own assumptions and agenda. The work of discernment demands attentiveness, silence, self-restraint, and always thoroughgoing honesty. We all have need of the rest that Jesus offers. Intentional, chosen, creative, restorative. When Jesus tells people to believe, to have faith, he's not referring, of course, to the creed or to sacraments. He's saying, trust in the signs. Make the connections. Look around you. Take the time and the space to mark what is happening in your life and recognize what time it is. This is God speaking in the clearest possible terms, if we're capable of listening. And again, this type of rest is intentional. It's not indolence. This is the rest that we acquire by degrees, the wisdom to stop acting and reacting out of our own and other people's pathologies, to relinquish things and people and ideas and attitudes that belong to a different time and a different place, and that only now distort us and fracture our wholeness. This is the rest where we learn and relearn what God's desire is for every one of us, where our burdens will be lifted and left behind, no matter how disorienting that might be and how resistant we are to letting go. This is where we learn to abide in the God who created us and who can be trusted to go on creating and recreating us and our world, restoring us. A God who knows our names, who holds the secret of who we really are and what we can become. The yoke is easy, the burden is light, only because, unlike just about everyone and everything else in our lives, God's desire for us is so simple, is so transparent, so reliable, and utterly trustworthy. So may it be.